Thanks for tuning in to my official YouTube channel, Reverend MeeLing, the Ornery PSA. I'm Reverend MeeLing, though I've been known by a few other names, including Reverend MeeLing, Reverend Susan MeeLing, Susan MeeLing, Lady MeeLing, Lady Dori, Belle, Lady MeeLing America, Sadistic Empress, few names. So I'm going to go over a few different aspects. One particular aspect that I'm going to go on. So today is the 27th of May, or I'm sorry, today is the 28th of May, 2020. And there are the reports in reference to the rioting that's occurring in St. Paul, Minnesota, in reference to the particular death in reference to one of the police or a group of individuals of the police force involved. Now, I have not done, I will disclose this, I have not done any actual research in regards to that stuff. However, I do know that during the Ferguson riots, where there were individuals who were looting as well as burning stuff down and etc., I had stated, not just in person, but I did at that one, I think I had said something online. It was one of my last times of putting something online for a while in reference to, well, look at the size of Michael Brown in comparison to the police officer that he was going against. What else occurred in that, like, I had made commentary and questions in reference to what else was going on. Because, you know, you have the little snippet in regards to one aspect, and then, you know, Ferguson, Missouri. I call it misery, I can't help it. You had all the issues here and there, and it reminded me of, in certain regards, when Hurricane Katrina occurred, and instead of people listening to the weather reports, they stayed in certain regards. Some of them had. There were others that were doing what they could, and they weren't able to evacuate. But instead of when the hurricane actually hit, when all that stuff occurred, instead of leaving, they went and looted and caused more issues instead of, fixing things for themselves, realistically. I'm not, blaming everybody. It's not that sort of thing. It's one of those, the aspects that I'm bringing this up. If you've seen prior official videos of mine, you'll understand that there does happen. It does kind of weave, twist, and turn, but then also comes around. So in that regard, then there's also the aspects of, what was it? There's one in Boston. And then there were certain issues in regards to that came out in that. And then I actually remember way back when, I don't know how many people actually do, but there was, I think the name was Rodney King. I think that was the name. And then there were the LA riots. And then there were certain aspects that were very much about racism. There's no denying that. There are also the aspects of the crimes that were committed at the exact same time. And so one of the things that I've brought up in various discussions throughout is I had remembered that there was somebody who had been sued because somebody else broke into their house and then they slipped on a rug. And then they sued the person whose house they had broken into instead of going to prison for breaking and entering, as well as theft and so on and so forth. That made no sense to me whatsoever. Like, that to this day does not make sense to me. And not the exact same, obviously. Obviously, but again, in the aspects of coming around and that, um, if an individual is proven to have been doing something wrong and actually genuinely committing a crime, then if that is the case, why is there the blame to the police officers and law enforcement for doing their jobs? In that regard of why would somebody be able to sue the property owner of a house that they broke into and then slipped on a rug in the house that they broke into? That does not make sense at all, whatsoever. Does not make sense. I do not understand that. I do not comprehend that. I do not like green eggs in ham. Sorry. However, the reality is I actually genuinely don't understand that. And I am sure that there are others that don't understand that. And while I have been told it is too expensive to rewrite certain laws and so on and so on, is it really? Is it really? Is it really that expensive to rewrite laws? Is it, I mean, like certain laws that are out of date. Isn't there like the equivalent of an executive order where, you review the statutes and stuff like that? You go, you know what? In this era, this just, doesn't work. So, you know, stricken from the record. Or, however, there have been amendments that have been made. I know I'm not the only one who knows that. I don't know what specific ones have been made in an overall sort of way. However, I would guesstimate certain things would probably be a lot easier to understand and comprehend for the common man or common woman. One of the things that I tried explaining to people in a different aspect was some of the stuff in regards to what was going on with my daughter. And there were people who worked in these different areas who couldn't explain to me. And they themselves said, I don't understand what I have to discuss with you anyway. Even though they had to explain the aspects of, and it was like, well, if you can't understand it and and not being rude, let me clarify that, if you don't understand that and that's your job, I mean, okay, I get it. I'm not the only person who's had a head injury, maybe on Palm Sunday in 2000 the way I did. Nonetheless, I'm not the only person who has understanding issues, cognitive disorders, memory deficits, so on and so forth. I know I'm not the only one. And so, isn't there a thing where it was supposed to be that no matter what, there would be an ability for even the common individual to be able to understand the most simplistic aspects, at least be able to have an overall genuine basic understanding of the laws and or the amendments or so on and so forth. And some of the people that I spoke with are like, well, yeah, it's supposed to be like that. And others, well, ish. And then others, well, if you were a lawyer, you'd understand that. Yes, but not everybody's a lawyer. And not denouncing lawyers. Let me clarify that. I mean, obviously there is the need for that, but I would guesstimate even lawyers are kind of like, okay, why? and I'm sure that they have more lawyer-ish words. Nonetheless, at some point in time, is there not a point to reevaluate things and be like, all right, you know what? How is it to make it the most simplistic to understand in the best way possible, where the overall aspects are are grasped enough that, you know, the genuine understanding, maybe not of every little detail, but enough, can occur. So that way the general population are able to know these varying differences. So that way they are able to, you know, in regards to, like, for example, the freedom of expression sort of thing. You know, there are certain aspects, yes, it is understood that it is considered, you know, not taboo, but an actual issue. Like, you can't say certain words on an airplane. You can't say certain words in a mass transit area for obvious aspects. However, the politically correct culture, I would guesstimate that a lot of people who want to say, oh, you need to be more politically correct, you need to be more politically correct, you need to be more politically correct, I would guesstimate there are plenty of them who have done that. And if you were to go and look at what they have said, whether in person or in writing, that a lot of this stuff would just not add up, and it would be quite hypocritical in such a regard. And if that's the case, how can you say you want to promote politically correctness, and yet when you're hidden behind your little screens or your keyboards or whatever, you know, yes, there is a genuine aspect in regards to public speaking. You do what you can to, you know, eloquently state certain things, but then there are just certain things that no matter how many you want to use of pretty words, you just can't. There are just certain things that you just cannot use pretty words to describe. And, you know, no matter what. And while I understand that everybody has feelings, I get that, I do. And I have feelings, whether people believe it or not. There are people that genuinely didn't believe that I could have feelings. However, I actually do. I just don't choose to show them all the time because, you know, I grew up in the way that I did. And, you know, I had to learn how to deal with that as a child before my head injury on Palm Sunday in 2000. And then after my head injury on Palm Sunday in 2000. And so always being able to find the correct words has not always been easy, especially when it comes to the damage that came from my head injury on Palm Sunday in 2000. And the irony is there have been many individuals will use prettier words while they're using words that they're complaining about from me. And it's one of those, how are you going to tell me to use better words when you are literally speaking and you're using words that you are complaining about me using? Well, it's you, so you should know better. Explain that. Explain that where I could understand that. Please do. Please explain that where I can understand that. And then, you know, whatever it was, it was. So, in that regard, when it comes to police officers and what they have to do and deal with on a daily basis, how many of them have to wear body cameras nowadays? How many of them not only have their body cameras, but their cell phone cameras? How many of them on top of that have the, you know, whatever's in the motorcycle or the police car, the dash cam stuff, both in the front and the rear, most likely. And then on top of that, then how many security cameras are at a usual business? Whether it's, you're outside of the business and the business has a security camera pointing towards the door or in the vicinity of, then, and not even forgetting like individual people in regards to, their personal cell phones and cameras and the like, but how many others have, the drone stuff? How many street cameras have that capability? How many light signals? Like I got made fun of for this, and this is not the exact same thing, but it's very close. So I pulled up to a stoplight, and the individual in the car, I can't remember who, was like, "Why are you getting upset?" And I said, "Because if the car in front of me would move up just a few feet, the car's tires will sit in the particular sensor zone to have the light change instead of us sitting here." And so I had flashed my high beams because I was like, okay, if you move up. Well, instead of them moving up, they flipped me off. And it's like, so we're just going to sit here then because you don't want to move your car that close to the crosswalk. Okay. And then, as soon as another car, which the light had been red for at least two songs plus the time talking in between, was about to go on to either the third or fourth song. I only remember two though. Nonetheless, a car comes up in the other lane. I couldn't go around the car in front of me because there was a car behind me. And they pulled up, 2 or 3 feet more than the car that I was stuck behind. And light turned green immediately. And so with that, in regards to the current riots that are going on right now, and while, yes, okay, you have the reactions from seeing certain specific clips, how many other things are going on at the exact same time? Now, if the police officers involved with the St. Paul, Minnesota riots right now are actually guilty, then yes, prosecute them. However, if they are not, if there was a justifiable reason for certain things, similarly in regards to Ferguson, that police officer's reputation and all that sort of stuff, what happened? Was he able to get a job back on that police force, or did he have to find another police force, if he could even do so? And so on and so forth. And it was proven that that particular individual, not only did he, steal stuff, and then the person that was with him that was egging him on and so forth had caused problems for that particular shop owner, but then the resisting of arrest and so on and so forth thereafter. And so, it is a delicate issue. There's no denying that. At the exact same time, how many individuals does that actually happen to nowadays? Or is it only every now and then? And if it's only every now and then isn't it better to look at, hey, it's really bad, obviously, if that is the thing. However, what can be done to genuinely change it? What can be put into place? The irony, I get it, but what can be put into place? Because there's only so much that you can expect of police officers and law enforcement to be able to deal with. They are human beings. And so there is only so much that they can, and it's not like they don't have a lot to deal with as it is. But now, how many different avenues do they have to, pun intended because they have to drive around, but how many avenues of various things do they have to pay attention to? Because of the facts that they have every single sort of camera paying attention to what they're doing. And then why is the focus not on what the criminal actually did instead. Or when, the riots have occurred, why is it that it's so quick to forget what was done to these cities, to the states, to the officers thereof in such a manner? Why is that so easy to forget? And yet, you go and do all these different things. Where is the justice for them? I mean, realistically, I don't deny that there have been very bad police officers, but in comparison to this era, to the times when that was far more common, far more usual to occur compared to nowadays, how many decades? How long has that realistically been different? And then think about the fact that, okay, if you have an issue, who is the first person that you're going to call if you need emergency assistance? Are you going to call, if your house is being broken into, are you going to call your friend, or are you going to call 911? I mean, I personally have a different view on that, but that's a personal thing. Nonetheless, who, if you have a fire that, is in your property or whatever, who are you going to call? So why are you going after these guys? Why are you making their jobs harder than they already are? Realistically, their jobs are obviously already difficult. Do you really have to add to that? And then while I understand that during this point in time, it's the quarantine lockdown and the restrictions here and restrictions there, that aspect, there are military guys, whether they are active duty, National Guard, reservists, or veterans, who have had to deal with that when they are in basic training and AIT, or whatever their MOS training is called, depending on what branch. They are stuck to a specific location. They have to maintain not only themselves, but their living quarters within standards. They have to do all these different things. And they don't get to go anywhere. It is quarantine in a different way, of course. And then same thing with AIT. When guys go overseas and they're stationed wherever, they're only allowed to go off post when they're allowed to go off post. And depending on what their jobs are, depends on whether or not it's someplace they actually want to go to. Realistically. So, I would guesstimate there's a lot of military guys who are just, I'm gonna throw a fit here and there. But compared to being stationed here, or being stationed there, or doing this, or even something simple, not simple, but in comparative to being stationed overseas, okay, got this, I'll throw a fit here and there, throw a temper tantrum, whatever, but then, comparatively, is it realistically the exact same? The obvious answer to that is no, it is not. They can actually leave their house to go within limits, of course, because of the quarantine status. Nonetheless, still in those same regards. And so, while then there's, the mayor of Boston, I think it was, he was rolling out the phase 1 of the opening on top of that. And, hearing certain things I have discussed with people in the state of Texas, specifically, though also in Washington State, guys in the military, they're on a set income. you want to complain about minimum wage. If you want minimum wage, then the guys who are working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, because realistically, while they have their set schedules for when they work as military, if they get a call in the middle of the night, you got to be at the base at whatever 100, and you got to have all your stuff squared away and ready to go. It is literally 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and that does not matter whether they are active duty, National Guard, or reservist. Some veterans as well, depending on what their prior job experiences are. And so while civilians want, well, this, and yes, no denying that. However, the ones that I wound up dealing with in certain regards of the complaining, those guys get paid what? Because, okay, and when I was active duty, which is, in comparison, when I was in active duty, I don't think it's much of a difference realistically. However, it was $900 a month after taxes. So let me get the calculator once there it is. So, and those of you who can do math in your head. So the average month has 30 days. $900 divided by 30 days. That is $30 a day, okay? If you take $30 a day divided by 24 hours in a day, that is $1.25 an hour that military guys as an E1 get paid. And that was for active duty status. Reservists and National Guard, unless they're activated, they do get paid less, but they have the ability to work a job. So, if it were to, and I did an article on my website, www.susanmeeling.com, where I actually put it out in visual format for you. However, just at the $10 an hour as a minimum wage times 24 hours in a day is $240 a day that E1s technically should be making, if going off of that minimum wage aspect. Because with the aspects that I wound up hearing complaints about, well, yes, military guys do get health care at a cost. It's not necessarily free. They're still in the military. There's a difference there. So, so going back to that, times 30 days, that's $7,200 a month for an E1 of what they should technically be making at a $10 an hour minimum wage. And yet, when I was in, and so hold on, let me pull this up, as far as what does the aspect of what and that also obviously does not forget, higher up ranking. So E1 pay now is, so for under 2 years of experience, an E1 makes $20,000, $797.20 a month. So really quickly, I'll pull that back up. So I'll do the equivalent of, so 22, oh, my bad, 220,797 divided by 12 months, $1,733 is what an E1 makes, which comparatively when I was in is obviously much better in comparison to 2,000. However, divide that by 30 days, and that is $57.76 or 77 cents per day. Divided by 24 hours, that is $2.41 an hour that an E1 gets paid for 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. For an E1. And for 4 years experience, it's the same price as far as the pay scale. Show you that. And you can go look it up on your techie pay scale. That's what you look it up as. Army pay scale. The Army, Air Force, Navy, Marine Corps, Coast Guard, those guys have a similar pay scale depending on. Nonetheless, in regards to the mayor that was discussing that, yes, there's no denying people need to work, need to do this, so on and so on. Absolutely, there are essential, but every business realistically is essential. However, for those who want to complain about certain things the way I dealt with people complaining to me back in 2010 and 2011 and 2012 especially, it's one of those, it's really difficult for me to look at what you are telling me and know the reality, or listen to you as you tell me, because I know the reality, I don't even need to look it up. And you want me to have sympathy for you while you want to treat the guys that I have respect for the way you do. I have a difficult time with that, realistically. And so in regards to the rioting, I don't know what police officers make, but again, on call. 24/7. Especially in a riot situation, unless, as the St. Paul, Minnesota mayor, I would guesstimate, if not the governor of Minnesota, called in the National Guard. And then there's that aspect. So, you know, in this time of quarantine, you know, as frustrating as it may be, I know I can't be the only one who's frustrated for a variety of reasons. Maybe some self-reflection should be looked into. Thought about. Because it's not like it's the first time that certain things have been blasted all across the media, only to find out that the police officer was in the correct aspect at the time. I obviously do not know in regards to the St. Paul, Minnesota one. However, if it is where that officer or sets of officers are actually innocent, that they were actually doing their job, and so on and so forth, then the question is, what is going to be done to rectify? It shouldn't be that they have to sue. It shouldn't. It should not have to be that way. Because I would guesstimate, even if they did sue, then they probably don't get the same coverage, right? It's not viewed the same way, right? I don't know. I don't think I've heard of that going on in a bigger aspect. And so again, while not denying, there were plenty, especially before the turn of the century, or millennium, I should say, especially after the turn of the millennium into 2001, specifically, where there were, back in the 1980s and 1990s, and well before then, there were some things that were going on. Compared to now, though, if you take a look at those numbers, those cases, and what occurred in comparison, while there are some things that are alike, how many differences are there realistically? How many times in comparison back then back even before the 1980s, going back into the 1970s, 1960s, 1950s, 1940s, 1930s, and 1920s, all the entire century of the 1900s. What is the realistic aspect of, realistically in certain cases, absolutely bad apples, dirty cops, compared to now? Not saying that there weren't good police officers back then. There were. However, in comparison, what is it? What is that aspect? I will let you, the viewer, go and do that research for yourself. Because I, personally, I've known that there are some that use their police officer status in an aspect where they shouldn't. In comparison, how many good police officers are actually out there? I would guesstimate a lot more than are given credit for. I would guesstimate. Though I would also guesstimate they're really tired of being blamed for stuff and being taken advantage of where they shouldn't be. Similarly to the way military guys have. So, again, it is quarantine lockdown. You have the time, you have the capability. Though I will also add, I wonder in regards to, I know with me, after my head injury on Palm Sunday in 2000, I have dealt with a lot of issues when it comes to technology stuff. Geek Squad and Best Buy definitely know that. And then I would even guesstimate, Facebook and that life and the different cafe mom and social media stuff and that I was into, depending on what aspect of my personal life would be like, okay, so why is there a new laptop sign in? Yeah, because I broke something, not on purpose. That's just my personal issues. That's what that is. Nonetheless, when I was in Washington State, I had major problems because of the techie stuff up there. It's a personal thing. With as much time in quarantine, I don't have Wi-Fi in my apartment because I'm still reacclimating to the state of Texas. I have to go back to Washington State to pick up the last 2 Medal of Honor artwork pieces. And I'm going to have to reacclimate all over again. So it's a safety precaution, not just for me. That's not just for me. That's for I acknowledge that. I acknowledge that. While it would be much better in certain regards, especially in the that's still painful. It's better than having the Wi-Fi in my apartment because of my own personal issues. I know that all of my neighbors most likely have Wi-Fi. They probably also have multiple techie devices throughout, and that's not even going into the aspects of the alarm system that's in my apartment, and so on and so forth. That, on and on and on. However, have tempers been flaring? People that have chronic pain, the way I deal with, I know I'm not the only one, I've been dealing with my headaches and migraines since I woke up from the coma from my head injury. However, how many have seen an increase in certain regards? I can't be the only one, and I don't even have the Wi-Fi in my apartment. I go to the business center, again, because of a multitude of reasons. I throw my temper tantrums as best as I can and focus my energies elsewhere so that way it's not nearly as disruptive
as, you know, it could be, and I try as best as I can. I do what I can, despite my temper tantrums. However, I still do what I can. So maybe there are some thoughts that should be going on in regards to self-reflection. That being said, you guys have a good one. Like and share and subscribe to my official channel.